Hey, welcome to the briefing. What I'm going to cover with you today is this. Before you send the council update, recheck the operating reality. This one matters because it sits in a place where a lot of public sector leaders get exposed. Not because they do not care, not because the department is asleep, not because staff are hiding from the issues, because the message gets ahead of the reality. And once that happens, the original service problem starts turning into a trust problem. The update may not be wrong, it may just be old. That sounds like a small difference, but it is not small when the update is official. It is not small when a council member is using it. It is not small when resident services is repeating it. It is not small when the public reads it and compares it to what they are still experiencing. A stale update can be more dangerous than a delayed update. A delayed update creates frustration. A stale update creates doubt. That is the part I want you to sit with for a second, because most leaders understand the pressure to respond. The phone is ringing. The inbox is moving. The PIO needs language. The city manager wants the current status. A council office is asking what happened. Residents want to know whether the issue is fixed. The department wants to show it is acting. So the organization reaches for the latest clean sentence. The repair is complete. The road is open. The portal is restored. The application window is active and the service request has been closed. Those sentences feel useful because they reduce pressure. But if the operating reality has changed, or if the public outcome has not been confirmed, those same sentences can create damage fast. This is where dynamic assessment comes in. Dynamic assessment is not about moving slowly. It is not about waiting until every possible fact is perfect. In public service, perfect information is rare. You're almost always acting with a moving picture. Dynamic assessment is the discipline of keeping the read alive while the situation is still moving. That means you do not treat the last report like it is automatically the current reality. You respect it, but you verify whether it still holds before you. Brief council, update residents, publish a public-facing status, or hand the call center a script. That is the control point. What changed since the last valid read? That question can save a leader from making the wrong official statement with confidence. And I've seen how this goes wrong. I have made versions of this mistake before in different environments. Not because I wanted to mislead anybody, because the first clean read felt solid. And when people are waiting for an answer, solid feels good. It feels like you can finally move. But experience teaches you something uncomfortable. A clean read is not always a current read. And when the update becomes official, current matters. Let's put this into a real public sector setting. Marisol is an assistant city manager in a growing city. Her lane touches public works coordination, resident services, public communication support, and council follow-up. That means she lives in the space between what the field is doing, what residents are reporting, what elected officials are asking, and what the city can responsibly say. That is not a quiet space. It is visible. It is political, without needing to be partisan. It is operational. It is public. The city has a water pressure issue in one neighborhood after a planned valve repair turns into a larger field problem. It's not a citywide emergency, but it is not nothing either. It affects several residential streets, a small commercial strip, and one senior housing complex. That senior housing detail matters because now this is not just a technical utility issue. It is also access, resident confidence, vulnerability, and public trust. Public Works responds early. The utility supervisor briefs leadership by mid-morning. The initial report is clear. The valve repair is complete. The main line is stable. Crews are flushing the line. Most addresses should see normal pressure by late morning. Resident Services checks the call pattern and says calls are slowing down. The PIO drafts a short update. The city manager's office prepares a council note, and the message sounds clean. Service has been restored to the affected area. Crews completed the repair and are monitoring the system. Now listen to that sentence. It sounds calm. It sounds useful. It sounds like the city acted. It gives council something to work with. It gives the public a sense that the situation is under control. And at the moment it was drafted, it may have been reasonable. That is why this is dangerous. The problem is not always that the sentence is careless. The problem is that the sentence keeps living after the reality moves. By late morning, the picture changes. Resident services get several new calls from the edge of the affected area. Not one random call, several calls from a similar area. A field crew reports that pressure is normal near the repair site, but inconsistent several blocks away. Then the senior housing manager calls and says some residents on upper floors still have low pressure. Now the original message has a problem. The primary repair may be complete. The full public outcome may not be confirmed. Those are two different things. And if leadership collapses those two conditions into one sentence, the city may end up saying more than it knows. At 12:30, a council member asked for a written update before a committee meeting. At 12:45, the PIO asks if the original language is still approved. That is the moment. Not dramatic on the outside, no sirens, no screaming, just a message waiting to be sent. But that is where leadership either protects trust or creates another problem. Send the update as drafted and the organization looks responsive. Recheck the operating reality and the organization stays accurate. One is faster, one is safer. The disciplined leader has to know the difference. Now I want to separate something here because this is where leaders can get sloppy. Council pressure is not the enemy. A council member asking for an answer is not automatically interference. Elected officials hear from residents. They have to respond. They need accurate information. They may be walking into a meeting. They may need to explain what staff are doing. That pressure is real and it is legitimate. But legitimate pressure can still shorten the read. That is the danger. The leader starts optimizing for speed. The sentence gets cleaner. The uncertainty gets shaved down. The message starts sounding more complete than the condition actually is. And that is where the language can betray the operation. The crew completed the repair. That may be true. Service has been restored, and that may not be fully confirmed. Those are not the same statement. If Marisol sends the original language, residents still experiencing low pressure will compare the official statement against their faucet, not against the utility crew's work order. That is the public reality. The resident does not experience repair completion. The resident experiences service. The city may be technically proud of the work done, but the public is reacting to the outcome still being felt. That is why dynamic assessment is so valuable here. It forces the leader to check which reality the update is describing. Is the update describing what staff completed, or is it describing what residents can now experience? That question changes the message. The better update is not dramatic. It is not defensive. It is not full of excuses. It is simply more accurate. The primary repair has been completed. Crews are checking pressure normalization across the affected area. Resident Services has received several reports of continued low pressure near the edge of the zone, including the senior housing complex. Public Works is verifying those locations now and will provide the next status update after field confirmation. That is a stronger public sector message, not because it sounds prettier, because it can survive contact with reality. It acknowledges the work completed. It names what is still being verified. It tells council what staff are doing next. It gives resident services language they can repeat. It gives the PIO a message that does not overclaim. It gives Public Works a verification task. It gives residents a statement that does not deny what they may still be experiencing. That is control, not perfect, controlled. And in public service, controlled matters because the public will tolerate a real update that says we are still verifying. They may not like it, but they can understand it. What damages trust is the update that says resolved, while their lived experience says not resolved. That gap is where credibility gets burned. Is your Think about the chain if the city sends the stale version. At first, everybody gets relief. The update is out, council has an answer, the PIO has moved the message. The department can say it responded. Resident Services has something to tell callers. For a few minutes, it feels like the system worked. Then the calls keep coming. The senior housing manager escalates. Residents tell the council office that the city says service is restored, but they still have low pressure. Resident Services has to walk back the statement without sounding like the city contradicted itself. The PIO has to revise the message under pressure. Public Works has to explain that repair completion did not mean full pressure normalization. The city manager has to correct the council note. Now the issue has changed. It is no longer just about water pressure. It is about whether the city knew what was happening before it spoke. That is the part that can damage confidence. The public starts asking, did they check? Did they overstate it? Did they ignore the edge of the affected area? Did they close the problem before every resident was back to normal? That is a hard place to recover from because the city may have done a lot of the operational work right. The field crew may have responded well, the department may have worked hard, resident services may have been engaged. The PIO may have drafted from the information available, but the official message still missed the current operating reality, and that becomes the thing people remember. This is the tension public sector leaders have to manage. Staff want to show progress, residents want certainty, council wants accuracy, the PIO wants clarity. The department wants to avoid panic. Leadership wants to close the loop. Every one of those pressures makes sense. But when they combine, they can push the leader toward a statement that is too final. Resolved, restored, closed, complete, normal. Those words carry weight. Use them carefully because in public work, a final word that is not actually final creates more than a communication correction. It creates a trust correction. And trust corrections are expensive. They cost staff time and they cost credibility. They cost emotional energy at the call center. They cost confidence between departments. They cost council confidence in staff updates. They cost the public's willingness to believe the next statement. That is too much cost for one sentence that could have been adjusted before it went out. So let's get practical. Dynamic assessment starts with the claim, not the topic and the claim. Do not say, we are sending a water update. Say, we are about to tell council that service has been restored. That is the claim. Now test it. Who confirmed it? When did they confirm it? What exactly did they confirm? Did they confirm the repair site? Did they confirm the whole affected area? Did they confirm line stability? Did they confirm pressure at the senior housing complex? Did they confirm that resident experience now matches the message? That is not bureaucracy. That is the difference between a defensible update and an exposed update. The more public the statement is, the more precise the claim needs to be. Not longer, more precise. There is a difference. A long update can still be vague. A short update can still be accurate. The goal is not word count, the goal is fit. Does the language fit the current reality? You can use this in any public-facing service environment. If a road crew clears a fallen tree but traffic control is still active, do not say the road is fully open. Say the obstruction has been cleared and crews are working to restore normal traffic flow. If a permit portal comes back online but applicants are still having submission errors, do not say the portal is fully restored. Say system access has resumed and staff are verifying successful submissions. If a park facility repairs the main issue but one entrance remains closed, do not say the facility is fully reopened. Say the facility is reopened with one access point still restricted while staff complete the final safety check. If a resident service queue drops in volume but unresolved cases remain in one category, do not say the backlog is cleared. Say overall volume has decreased and staff are working through the remaining cases in that category. That language is not weaker. It is cleaner because it tells the truth at the right level. The public does not need every internal detail. but the public does need the message to match the condition. There is another failure pattern inside this. Different departments begin carrying different versions of the truth. Public Works says the repair is complete. Resident Services says residents are still calling. The PIO says the update is ready. Council says residents are still reporting impact. The website still says monitoring. The call center script says restored. Now the city does not have one message. It has fragments, and fragments become friction. The call center gets trapped. The field crew feels misrepresented. The PIO has to rewrite under pressure. Council starts checking staff updates against resident techs. Leadership loses confidence in the status language. That is not only a communication issue, that is a read control issue. The organization has not kept the operating picture aligned. Dynamic assessment helps pull the pieces back together before the public message locks in. It does not require a task force. It requires a sharper pause. What changed? Who has the current field read? What are residents reporting now? What can we state without overstating? Who needs the updated language before this goes out? That is practical leadership. That is the difference between public communication as performance and public communication as operating discipline. Now, I want to make something clear. This is not an argument for slow government. People already think government moves too slowly. This is not about adding drag. This is about preventing rework. A bad update creates work. A stale update creates calls. A corrected statement creates confusion. A council clarification creates more staff time. And a trust problem creates more pressure than the original delay. So the fastest path is not always the shortest path. Sometimes the fastest path is the one that avoids the avoidable correction. That is a hard lesson for leaders who are used to being rewarded for speed. But speed that breaks trust is not speed. It is debt. You pay it later, and you pay it with interest. That is why I want leaders to respect this moment before the update goes out. It is a small moment. One sentence, one approval, one status line, one council note. But it can carry the weight of the whole agency's credibility. If you are sitting in a leadership seat, here is the internal standard I would want you to set. Do not punish the first report for being incomplete. Early information is supposed to be incomplete. Do not make people afraid to brief quickly. You need early reporting. You need field signal. You need resident services to tell you what they are hearing. You need the PIO drafting before the room is perfectly settled. But do not let early information become final language without a recheck. That is the standard. Early read, recheck. Then official message. It is simple, it is repeatable, and it keeps the organization honest without freezing it. The mistake is not moving fast. The mistake is failing to update the read before the fast move becomes public, and that is the lesson. Now ask yourself where this shows up in your environment. Where do you use final language too early? Where do you say resolved when you mean primary work complete? Where do you say restored when you mean crews are monitoring? Where do you say the queue is cleared when you mean the main category is reduced? Where do you say the system is back online when you mean the vendor says it is back online? Where do you say residents have been notified when you mean the update was posted somewhere? That last one matters. Posting is not the same as reaching. Closing is not the same as resolving. Completing work is not the same as confirming outcome. Drafting an update is not the same as holding the current read. Those distinctions are not academic. They show up in phone calls, inboxes, meetings, screenshots, public comments, council questions, and staff frustration. The public sector leader has to protect those distinctions before pressure erases them. Here is the field check. Before you send the next update, write the claim in one sentence, then ask 4 questions. When was this last true? Who confirmed it? What exactly did they confirm? What has changed since then? That is the first pass. Then ask the harder question. Are we describing completed work or confirmed public outcome? That question will expose a lot. If the answer is completed work, say completed work. If the outcome is still being verified, say that. If the condition varies by area, say that. If the department is monitoring, say what it is monitoring. If the next update depends on field confirmation, say when the next confirmation is expected. That is not over-explaining. That is disciplined public language. The listener does not need a novel. They need a statement that will not collapse when reality pushes against it. And I will tell you this, the strongest leaders I have seen are not the ones who always sound certain. They are the ones who know what kind of certainty they actually have. They can say this part is confirmed. They can say this part is still being checked. They can say this is what changed. They can say this is what we are doing next. They do not use uncertainty as an excuse. They use it as a boundary. That is a powerful leadership habit. Because once people trust that you do not overstate, they are more likely to trust you when you do state something firmly. That is how credibility builds, not from sounding confident all the time, from being accurate when confidence would be easier. So bring it back to Marisol. What the easy move was to approve the drafted update. The better move was to recheck the operating reality. That does not mean she delayed the city for hours. It means she took control of the message before the message created risk. She separated repair completion from pressure normalization. She treated resident calls as signal, not noise. She respected council pressure without letting it rewrite the facts. She gave the PIO accurate language. She aligned resident services, public works, and the council office around the same current read. That is public sector leadership, not flashy, not performative, but real. Because the public does not need leaders who sound polished and miss the condition. The public needs leaders who can keep the read current while the work is moving. That is the spine of this briefing. Before you send the council update, recheck the operating reality. Before you brief the elected body, recheck the operating reality. Before you tell resident services restored, recheck the operating reality. Before you give the call center a script, recheck the operating reality. Before you let the cleanest sentence become the official position, recheck the operating reality. The message may be ready. The question is whether the read is still valid. If it is, send it. If it is not, adjust it. Not to sound cautious, not to protect yourself, to protect the truth of the operation, to protect the staff who have to stand behind the message, to protect the residents who have to live with the outcome, to protect public trust before you have to repair it. The update matters. The resident matters. The council member matters. The crew matters. The PIO matters. The department matters. But the read holds all of it together. If the read is expired, the message is exposed. If the message is exposed, the organization creates risk. If the organization creates risk, leaders spend time recovering from a problem they could have prevented. So do not send the update just because it is drafted. Do not send it just because the pressure is building. Do not send it just because it was true earlier. Ask what changed. Separate completed work from confirmed outcome. Make the public language match the current operating reality. Then move, not perfectly, with control. Thanks for listening to the briefing.